In this particular situation, basically, all the communication tool is down, and there's no enough information to really finalize all the things. So, but you have to respond to the real critical situation very quickly and repeatedly. So, maybe in my case, my kind of first decision was to delegate most of the things to the executives in the front, because they have more information, they have better sense of the kind of intuition to respond to the situation in the right way. I think they made most of the right decision at the right timing. In this kind of situation, sometimes the typical red tape type of person, typical graduate of Tokyo University, tends to postpone the decision making, because there's no enough information, they don't want to take the risk to make the decisions and so on and so forth, and because of this crisis in front of them, so if they make the wrong decisions, the serious things might happen. But then those things might come over to them as a responsibility. So they really fear, they get scared of that, and they tend to postpone all the decisions and real solutions or real actions. So actually that really happened in this case on the central government, on the bureaucracy. So on the front line, or more the grassroots kind of activity or efforts was really working well. And but as for the headquarters of the government side, they're really in chaos, and they didn't make any decisions. We have 3 bus companies in our portfolio in those areas, disaster-struck areas. And so we send basically a top executive from my company to those companies, those 3 bus companies. So basically I delegated those, the authority to those top of those management of those bus companies who are in front. So, one of the most difficult decision making at that time was that how to do with the evacuation from the nuclear plant when the accident was going on. And so basically, of course at that time nobody knew what is really going on in the nuclear plant, including our government, the Tokyo Electric Power Company. So, but anyway, we have to decide to help the evacuation or not, because there's no other way to evacuate 90,000 people in those 20 kilometers area from the plant. So that was basically the decision by the local top management. They might have hesitated, of course, but obviously they made the right decision at the right timing. At the real, crisis, leader must decide by themselves, based upon their own responsibility. So if they are not prepared for that, they escape from the critical decisions. That is the worst things to be done at that situation. So I really learned the importance of the criteria of the leaders, and how we choose that kind of leaders. Because sometimes, typically the society or organization which really put the importance on the coordination or harmonization, or the consensus building, we tend to avoid the person with very strong leadership to be a leader, because he or she might omit or skip those consensus building or coordination procedure. So that's a dilemma usually.
So the dilemma is that the leader should
be very decisive,
right?
Very, very determined, or show a very strong leadership and strong decision in the very difficult situations. Even it might raise some strong kind of resistance from some people or some parties, right? because they cannot wait for consensus building at the situations. But in some type of society, which really, I mean, believe that consensus building is very important, you tend to choose the person with personality, which really, I mean, they very carefully go through that kind of procedures. So you tend to choose the very careful person. Sometimes, though, that kind of careful person is not a decisive person. Right? So that's the dilemma. So the conditions or some kind of the criteria to be, I mean, chosen to be a leader, and the conditions to be a good leader is sometimes different, sometimes even the opposite. So that's something became very clear in this particular situation in Japan this time. So we have many best and brightest people in government, both bureaucrats and both politicians. But they got a power, they have in a high position, perhaps because they are not really decisive people. Generally speaking, this type of natural disaster, what I heard from the economists is that tend to work positively for the economic growth, because some kind of creative distraction often happens after this kind of disaster. At least some kind of the capital expenditure will happen on those to rebuild those places like buildings and housings and roads and those kind of things. And this kind of expenditure will work very well to enhance the economy and of course activate the future economic activity in those areas. So that is very good. But there's a couple of concerns in this particular case in Japan. One is nuclear accident. Nuclear accident, not just its kind of radioactive, direct negative kind of influence from that accident, but also that is very psychologically makes a very negative influence onto the Japanese economies. The people tend to consume less or invest less because of the anxiety of the nuclear accident or future, and of course that affects the risk of the electric supply shortage, especially in the summertime. So all those things seems to be kind of damping down or slowing down the Japanese people's economic activity, but also the investment or visit from the overseas. So that is one short to middle term concern I have for the recovery. And as for the long term things, the challenge or the concern is that whether we can make this restoration process to be more really innovative or just back to the old days. So in those areas, fishery industry and agricultural industries were very important industry on those areas, especially as for the number of the employment. So, but those industries are also very aged industries. Many people who are in that industries are very aged, very old. So and very small. So not really efficient industry structure is there. So the question is that many things are gone, destroyed. So this is a good chance to rebuild from the scratch. So, but the question is that the way those things are going to be rebuilt is becoming like, really building something new, something innovative, something more suitable to the 21st century environment, or just build the same old kind of structures or not.